Uh, Greetings, YouTubers and live videoers. It's me, Wayman29, and I came on to do another section of early Christianity in groups, and this one's going to be on the Marcionians. And I know at times I drag things out. Maybe I'm a little bit too technical, but that's my style. And since I don't adhere to any type of theological system, nor am a part of any kind of theological doctrine, I like to take liberty and raise important questions and issues that at times people may agree with or may not agree with. And that's what the comments section is for. If you disagree, let me know. And if you agree, let me know. And we can all learn something. So, this isn't here for inspirational material on what's true and what's not. If you want to read something like that, go to Barnes & Nobles and buy Chicken Soup for the Soul. At any rate, the Marcionians were an interesting group of people because they rejected anything Jewish, and they thought in dualistic terms, or dualists, which means Marcion came to the idea, or the conclusion, that possibly the God of the Old Testament was separate than the God of the New Testament. And he retaliated fiercely against the Old Testament, and he wrote a text, the Antithesis, which he dedicated in response to the proto-Orthodox movement that was writing against him. Tertullian dedicated 5 volumes of material against the Marcionians, and I'll be posting a link for that, and you can read that. Also, I'll be posting a link to the Antithesis. Where they came from, and why such fierce retaliation. Well, I never realized fully until probably a week ago the impact that the Jewish Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud, and texts like Josephus have on fully understanding early Christianity. And many times these texts are so long and so large they virtually go unread. However, this movement, I believe, currently was stemmed out of the retaliation against messiahs in the flesh. Marcionians, they believed that Jesus just appeared to be in the flesh and was really not. And they used their favorite apostle was the Apostle Paul, not his pastoral epistles, but just the Apostle Paul, and excluding also the letter to the Hebrews. And the Marcionians took great liberty at editing text, just as other groups did, to slant it towards their views. So the Luke text that they used did not contain the virgin birth, and all prophecies on Christ being the Messiah were edited out. And what's interesting is you could take the Jefferson Bible and pair it up with the ideas of the Marcionians, and they would fit. And another interesting thing, if you took the God delusion and in that text the Richard Dawkins definition of God and match it up to the Marcionian beliefs and ideas they had about the Old Testament God, that would probably match up too. But what was the retaliation? The retaliation was the great Jewish wars that were going on as these groups were being formed and early Christianity was being formed, and the whole time period was just slice and dice. And many messiahs, which I'll be posting links to, who were said to be messiahs, were leaders of these wars, and the Jews looked for them to liberate them from the Roman Empire. And during the Great Revolt and some of the others, the Jewish death count was piling up, especially the Bar Kokhba's revolt. Probably said that wrong, but I'm going to post a link to that in the Kitos War. had something to do with this, and they were just tired of the whole ideas of messiahs not being able to perform. So they rather would go with the cosmic Christ rather than the fleshly body Christ, because the flesh and the body can be destroyed. Now, all these wars resulted in what, in Judaism, and even in modern day, forcing the end, where if certain requirements were met, then surely the new Messiah would have to come and deliver the people from tyranny. However, that did not happen, and bodies on both sides, both the Jews and the Romans, were stacked up. That mindset carries over in today's thinking. Many evangelical groups who are very apocalyptic and always watch the end times do things some ways to force the end. If these certain criteria are met, then surely the Christ will come back and liberate people from the world of sin. So, some really interesting texts were written, and I'll be posting those, the Antithesis and Tertullian's 5 volumes against Marcion. And also, it's something to think about how it floats over into modern society. One of those, which I wanted to read, some of the beliefs from Bart Ehrman's Lost Christianities, where he lays down much better than I did, feebly did, the understanding of the Marcionians. The God of the Old Testament insisted that people keep his law and penalized them when they failed. He was not evil, but he was rigorously just. He had laws, inflicted penalties on those who did not keep them, but this necessarily made him a wrathful God, since no one kept all of his laws perfectly. Everyone had to pay a price for their transgressions, and the penalty for transgression was death. The God of the Old Testament was therefore completely justified in executing his judgments and punishments and sentencing all people to death. So, you get that in evangelical movements today when they try to justify the carnage in the Old Testament, which it's not out of context as ancient Near Eastern literature. Neither are the law codes. However, you can see how those kinds of ideas carried over from the Marcions into into evangelical views. Carrying on, the God of Jesus came into this world in order to save people from the vengeful God of the Jews. He was previously unknown to the world and had never had any previous dealings with it. Hence, Marcion sometimes referred to him as God the stranger. Not even the prophets of the future Messiah come from this God, for these refer not to Jesus, but to a coming Messiah of Israel, to be sent by the God of the Jews, the creator of this world and the God of the Old Testament. Jesus came completely unexpected and did what no one could possibly have hoped for. He paid the penalty for other people's sin to save them from the just and wrathful God of the Old Testament. So in a nutshell, that's how it all happened, and I'll be posting a bunch of links, as I said before. Hopefully people leave some good comments, and it's just something to ponder. Take care, YouTubers. Take care of yourself and each other.